Hey everybody, today I want to talk about buying a place in Japan, buying an aparto. And this is maybe an unusual situation, but maybe some other people are thinking about it, and I hope it helps you out also. First off, prices in Japan are cheap. In America, I was looking at apartments and things like that. 300K, 400K, more than that. It was crazy. I'm not ready to spend that much money on an apartment in an inflated cost of living area. No, thank you. But in Japan, in total, I paid about 18 million yen, which is like 120K USD. Not bad. It's for a 2-bedroom. Maybe the bedrooms are kind of small, but still, that's not bad at all. Especially a 10-minute walk from the train station, 5-minute walk from the grocery store and places to eat. All right, sounds great to me. And if you math it out, for me, since I'm on a digital nomad visa, I couldn't get long-term apartments even if I was staying for 6 months. First off, the digital nomad visa stops you from renting longer term without a residence card. So I was going to be stuck paying double for an apartment, like 2K a month. And if you math that out, that's like 24K a year if I wanted to keep it year round, if I could even find somebody to rent me it year round. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to have like a kitchen and a bed and a workstation and everything else that I wanted to keep in Japan for when I come back. Also, a lot of places just won't rent to foreigners. It's notorious in Japan that foreigners have a hard time renting. So going through the hassle of all of that when I could just avoid it didn't make too much sense to me. So let's say I do this for like 2 years. That's almost 50K already. If I do for 3 years, there's 75K just keeping a place that I'm renting for when I'm here for like half the year. That's almost as much as this entire apartment was to buy. So math-wise, it just makes a lot of sense to maybe consider about buying a place instead of renting if you have the means. And if you don't have the means, if you're able to get a loan, that would also be amazing here. I've heard of some foreigners being able to get loans, but definitely if you have family here or any other connection to Japan, since the interest rates in Japan are insanely low, we're talking like under 1%. That's fantastic. So, after you've decided that you want to get a place in Japan, what comes next? Well, for me, it started with just getting a feel for the areas of Japan. You know, like Osaka, Tokyo, Fukuoka, or maybe Sapporo if you like it cold. Those are basically the main areas of Japan. Apparently, Osaka and the Kansai region is more friendly. That's what people say. And Tokyo has more of a reputation of people being cold or something. I got no clue. I've never been, but maybe. I also heard that Tokyo was insanely busy. I have a buddy that went up there and he said he was getting crammed into trains like a sardine. And personally, I didn't want to have to get so intimately acquainted with the Japanese people every time I rode a train. So I was looking more towards Osaka and Fukuoka and Nagoya and stuff like that. But when I went into it, I had no idea even where Tokyo was. So it just came from looking at a map a lot and looking at apartments a lot. Unless, of course, you're coming here for work, and then you just gotta go where you gotta go, right? But me, I'm all digital, and I work for myself. So I didn't overly care where I was, as long as there were places to eat nearby. I was pretty happy. I just wanted to chill and work and eat. So I started just looking at apartments and prices on Sumo. I think there are some other websites for listings, but Sumo seemed to be the most popular. But their website is kind of janky, and exploring by the map view only seemed to work for me on my phone and not my desktop, which was fine. I would look on Sumo every night before bed. I would just go browsing around apartments and saving them and sending them to myself to look at later and research. But I made it work in the end. Then I just looked at prices and apartments and tried to get a feel for how much stuff costs. Lots and lots of apartments. Like, how much was I really going to be getting into? This wasn't a huge investment I wanted to make since I've never been to Japan before. So I kept towards the lower end of prices, and I was trying to find a deal. Something that was nice, good location, but kind of cheap. I found out that prices right in the middle of the city were pretty high, and apartments in the sub 22 million yen range, or like 150K-ish, were super tiny in the middle of the city, like a studio apartment tiny. Then I found if you just looked 10 to 20 minutes outside of the city centers by train, you could get 1 or 2 bedrooms or even more for about the same price. So I started to expand like where I could see myself living. Because even out away from the city center, you're going to have a lot of services regardless, which is great. But you also have to consider more than just that. You have to look for distance from the train station, or trying to go anywhere would be a huge pain. So I was looking for anywhere under 10-minute walk from the train station. And on Sumo, you can filter for that sort of thing, so it makes it pretty easy. So also be careful, because where it shows on the map on Sumo isn't necessarily where it is in real life. You've got to double check that. It can be off by a couple blocks even. But usually, when I found a place I was interested in, I'd run to ChatGPT and it would help me narrow it down where it actually was on the map. And then I would go onto Google Maps, match up the building from the pictures, and try and get a real solid, concrete idea of where it was. And then I would start the next phase of researching, which was looking at Google Maps a lot. Looking at every store around the apartment, every place to eat, looking at the reviews, because you got to think, if you're going to be living there without a car, that's your life, what you can walk to, and the train station. But you're not going to be taking the train all the time, nor would you want to, because walkability was key for me, and I wanted to be close to the grocery store, especially because I wanted to cook, and also a lot of places to eat. And you can tell a lot from Google Maps if you're really trying to picture how life is going to be. You just got to put in the time, and you got to go into Street View, and you got to walk around a little bit, and you got to really think about, do I have everything that I want in this area? And for me, this was super important because I was buying this place without ever looking at it. I was doing this all remotely, halfway around the world. In my view, you can tell a few things by seeing a place in person, but there's so much more you can't know that'll make or break a place until you're actually moved in and living there. Like how your neighbors are and how it is at night, if anybody's being annoying at night or when they come home from work, or there's just so much that you can't tell until you're actually there. I think anybody that's rented places or lived in this world kind of knows that's how it goes. So I wasn't too worried about buying a place remotely, as long as I was able to get a general feel for the condition of the place and the area. And so I did need some extra information from the realtor before I was comfortable, bidding on a place. A few pictures wasn't quite enough. So after I found places that I was interested in, then I went through the process of trying to contact the realtors who had listed them. Now this is where the real challenge begins, since I can't read or speak Japanese. Surprise. But with LLMs coming up these last couple years, this step has become shockingly accessible. First, I'd usually ask it to help me track down who the realtor was, and if they had a website and email listed. Then I'd go to their website and Google Translate it and try to reach out to them about the listing, asking them if they could send me video so I could see more. If I couldn't get in touch with them through their website, and Sumo also had a form I could fill out to contact them. It was a little bit more troublesome of a form typically, but being able to take pictures and sending it into ChatGPT and asking it to help me fill it out back and forth, I could get through it. The only problem was that a lot of them wanted a Japanese phone number. So I just made up a random Japanese phone number, filled it in, and then in the comment that I was sending to them, I told them email me because I'm a foreigner. So some things to know about apartments in Japan is that they call their concrete apartments mansions. So if you hear that, that's just what they're talking about. They're just concrete. And that's probably what you want instead of the much older, cheaper places that have really thin walls. I was actually pretty nervous about the noise issues, but so far in my apartment, I do hear knocks if they are moving something around above me, like a chair in the apartment above, but I haven't heard any voices or TVs or anything else. So either everyone is just extra quiet, which is possible, or the concrete walls are fine for sound. I was so nervous about the sound that I was planning on adding an extra sliding door to help soundproof from the outside. But I have a feeling that's just because of my last year and a half in Puerto Rico and people blasting their music. But so far, everything has been fine around here. Also, in terms of getting older places, apparently building codes for earthquakes keep getting updated. And the last big one was in 2001. So I stuck to places that were built after that. Older places are probably fine, but I figured better safe than sorry because this place does have earthquakes, apparently. Along the same lines, being aware of other disaster risks is important, like tsunami risks if you buy close to the water. Those apartments do tend to be cheaper for that reason. Now, the first apartment that I was really interested in and ready to make an offer on was one that was stripped down to the bones in Osaka. Apparently, the former person had died in there and was a smoker, so they just took out all the floors and walls and everything else. I was imagining a full remodeling job to get a really unique place. We were talking for a week or two through email, and they had sent me videos, and I was asking questions and ready to make an offer. But sadly, someone else came in and bid the full price, and they just accepted it without even notifying me or giving me a chance to bid. So I was a little bit irate about that. But I moved on, and I kept going through the process with a handful of other places that I could see myself living in. Like, another one was right in the middle of Osaka, right in the middle of the city, and this really tall building had a great view, but it was super, super small. But compared to my living in the forest in that camper, it was luxury, though the toilet wasn't even a bidet, and they didn't have floor heating. I did make a bid on it after seeing the video, but it turns out they weren't actually ready to sell it for a couple more months, which didn't work for me since I already had my ticket and trip planned. I was ready to get out of Puerto Rico. I was actually looking in a lot of places. I was looking in Nagoya, Osaka, Fukuoka. Those were the main ones that looked pretty good to me, kind of more chill. I knew language would be more of an issue in those places, but I wanted to learn Japanese, so I thought it would just push me to learn Japanese more. But eventually, I found a place here in Kobe and went through the entire process and got videos, and they looked pretty good, so I bid on it, and they accepted. Apparently, they don't really haggle that much on prices in Japan. You can try, and online people say they have been successful, but my attempts didn't get anywhere, and I knew from looking at many apartment listings that the price was pretty reasonable, so it worked for me. In the end, I was pretty happy with it. Also, the apartment had floor heating in the living room and even a small dishwasher, so those were some nice extras that you didn't see that often in apartments. Then it was time to get ready for the paperwork and my arrival, and also get my yen ready. I used Wise for transferring USD into yen, and I did it when the prices were a lot better. So that all went pretty smoothly, and I alerted Wise ahead of time that I was going to be doing a large transfer. I had heard some people online were getting their Wise accounts frozen, but everything went ahead pretty smoothly for me, and I sent the money before getting on the plane. But buying a place in Japan comes with a lot of extra things that they wanted, especially since I was a foreigner and this was the first time the realtor had worked with a foreigner. First off, they wanted me to get an affidavit that my signature was my signature, because I'm guessing them watching me sign it wasn't going to be enough for them for some reason. Also, because Japanese use special registered stamps as their signature, but I didn't have anything like that. Next, they wanted me to have a tax representative. Apparently, because I'm a foreigner without a resident card, someone in Japan had to act as my tax representative to get my taxes sent to. I had thought this would be an easy formality to get done, and it would have been if I had friends or family in Japan that could have just accepted it for me in the mail, but I don't know anyone in Japan, so I had to find someone. What followed was weeks of emailing every accountant and tax company that I could find on Google Maps in basically every city across all of Japan. I'm talking literally hundreds of emails sent out. I also discovered that judicial scriveners, they don't do that. So don't bother sending them a lot of emails. Eventually, I found two people. One person in Kobe with pretty reasonable rates, and another person in Tokyo who spoke English and was super fast to get back on email replies that also had reasonable rates but a little bit higher. I ended up going with the Kobe one just because they were a little closer to me, and then they connected with the realtor and had to send their stamps and other forms for each other before I arrived, which I didn't have to do anything for, just told them talk to each other. And that's because whenever I had correspondence back and forth with people, I would have to copy paste what they said into ChatGPT, have it translate it for me, and then go back and forth like that. It was really slow. And then I also couldn't reference older emails at a glance. I guess I could have organized it better in ChatGPT, but I was talking with a lot of people, a lot of emails back and forth to get this done. Also, the realtor had to have a judicial scrivener involved, but they handled all that, and I'm still not too sure what a judicial scrivener does, but they had a lot of papers, so I guess they were doing something. Now, all of this is pretty different to how it is in the US. When I bought the forest in Maine, it was all through email. I just had to DocuSign a couple things and then make a payment, and boom, we were done. Before I showed up, it was all settled, friction-free, smooth. But in Japan, things are a lot more complicated, and trying to get it done remotely was going to be even more of a pain. So we just planned on having the signing when I showed up the day after in Japan, personally. So I got a hotel room like a block away from the realtor's office in Kobe, and the day after I showed up and we did it. So I thought this was going to be a short meeting. I thought I was just going to come in, put my signature down, shake some hands, or bow, I guess, and be on my way. But it actually ended up being like an hour-plus process, and the seller, the realtor, and the judicial scrivener was there. And I thought because it was going to be such a quick process that my translator app would be enough, but it turns out that they had a lot that they wanted to say, and the realtor and the seller did not speak English. Luckily, the judicial scrivener did know enough English to get us through, but if I were doing it again, I'd probably hire a translator just to make sure things went smoothly. I had also sent ahead extra money to the realtor to withdraw for me in cash, so that would save me a little bit in fees to take out. At the end of the meeting, they gave me the keys and all the codes I'd need, and then it was time to deal with getting utilities turned on. Now, this was its own little epic adventure. Again, I leaned on ChatGPT to get me through this a lot. Copy, paste, copy, paste. Gas and electric are usually bundled together by the same company, but they need to come into the apartment to turn it on and test. The water, they don't need to come into the apartment, and you can do the final turn on outside by just turning a valve. So it took a couple days for them to come and get that all turned on after filling out the forms. But the internet has been a much bigger issue. They have no English support, and they keep trying to contact me through the phone. If I had internet, I could probably use ChatGPT to talk to them on the phone, but my phone plan and internet plan are on 2 different SIM cards, so I can't really pull that off without internet. I'm caught in a catch-22 here. Thankfully, I met my neighbor, who I asked for help to call the internet company, and she doesn't speak English, but we're figuring it out. And hopefully I have internet in this week, maybe next week, who knows? And then there's the issue of management fees for the building. So all apartments have maintenance and management fees listed, and these can actually vary quite a bit. For me, it ended up being about $150 a month in fees, and they take bank transfers, so it's not a huge issue, but just something to be aware of. Also, apartments have a different way of handling trash than you're probably used to. They want everything separated. Plastic stuff in one bag, burnable and food garbage in another, cans in another, bottles in their own bag too. So in total, it's like 4 different bags that you have to take out on different days. And the trash burnable window, I found out, is from 5 to 8 a.m. So they want me to wake up and take it out. And today, I actually took it out on the wrong day and caused a minor international issue. Also, the main ceiling lights in rooms and AC units, people take those with them when they leave. Even if you're renting, you'll move apartment to apartment and you'll take your lights and your AC with you, which I thought was a little bit strange. Buying, it was kind of all right. Of course, they would take their AC unit, I guess. But renting, it's just a different thing in Japan, I guess. Anyhow, that's the overview of how I got this place in Japan. Pretty straightforward. Just find a place that you like, get some videos, look at them, and do you like the area? And then make a bid. The way I did it was probably a little bit unusual, but I also bought the forest in Maine this way, so it's worked out. No problems. You just gotta do your research. Hopefully it helps someone out there that is doing the same crazy thing that I do. Prices are great in Japan, especially if you wait for certain times to buy yen, and financially, it just made a lot of sense for me to buy a place. I'll be doing more videos as I keep working my way through my time here, so subscribe if you want to see more of that stuff. See you later.